Do not touch it. Do not even mess with it. Do not even think about touching it. Do not think about the thoughts that could lead to you touching it. These were some of the commands that my father gave as he left the house for the day. My brother and I don't know if my sister was even in the picture at the time, loved playing G.I. Joes. And so we started out in the den, and we were playing, and we were building with blocks and making forts and things that boys would do. And eventually, G.I. Joe needed to expand his horizons and be able to make a fort that was even cooler. The problem was you cannot see the enemy when you're down low. And so we decided that we were going to build a watchtower because you need to be able to see the enemy from far off. Now, I wasn't alone in this, although I did take the immediate rap for it. You see, my mom and dad were planning on painting the house in the walls inside our home. And so they had plenty of paint over in the corner, the very thing that my dad said, do not touch it. Do not even think about touching it. As a matter of fact, don't think about the thoughts that would lead for you to do something that only you could do. Don't touch it. Going to work. Love you dearly. Mwah. So, leaves and goes to work, and we see it in it's very easy structure. Get a nice cylinder upon cylinder, and we can create a tower. So we pile them up, and it gets to a decent height. That is not enough. We don't need a regular tower. We need a mega, ultra, awesome, wicked, amazing tower. And so we continue to pile them up, but it comes to a point where you can't just pile them up with your little arms without then getting a chair involved. And so this is where, unbeknownst to my mom and dad, my brother's handing me paint cans, and then I put them on top. And I believe it was when we got to about 8 or 9 paint cans when I did not realize how difficult and important it was to have a firm foundation. You see, we were stacking all of this on carpet. A little thicker carpet, not shag, but close. And so as we're stacking it on the carpet, you can see it moving, but we realize that all we have to do when we see it moving is put a can a little to this side. And then you see it moving that way. Put a can a little to this side. We're not stacking them exactly on top of one another, which then as it begins to wobble, as soon as it starts to wobble, my Benedict Arnold of a brother runs off. And he's a traitor and runs, and so I'm there by myself as I'm watching. And I don't know if you've had these moments where everything, as it's beginning to move, then goes into slow motion. And you see it begin to fall. And all I can think is, I'm going to die. See, the problem with this room is that there isn't just carpet in the room. There's also a good-sized slab of bricks that have been intricately placed so that we could have a freestanding, very nice wood-burning stove. And so as the paint cans hit, you would think clearly they are sealed properly. They could take this kind of fall. You would be mistaken. As it began to shoot off in the very nature of G.I. Joe and the patriotism that he had, like fireworks on the 4th of July, paint and more paint all over the brick, all over the walls, all over the carpet, all over the stove. This is where I go to meet my maker. My mom comes down the hallway with the thud sounding much like the steps of T-Rex in Jurassic Park. And then as she turns, the yelling gets to something more along the lines of a WWF superstar wrestler. What have you done? What are you going to do? You're going to get in the ring with me. I'm going to beat you within an inch of your life. She didn't say that quite like that way, but that's how I pictured it as a small child. And she said the words that still, as I say them to this day, you're kind of twitch, just wait until your father gets home. Just beat me. Just beat me right now. Just within an inch of my life, kill me, anything, not that. And so my mom and her friend proceeded to clean up, and I went to my room, and my dad came home, and as much as a mess as they could clean up was cleaned up. And my dad, even still as gracious as he was, and as amazing of a leader and a father as he was, proceeded to tell me how that was probably not the best idea, in only a way a military father could. And how us as little soldiers probably could have picked a better mission type thing, you know? And the good news on the end of that is that when they called insurance, they had a $100 deductible, and then they saved $50 from the install by ripping out the carpet, and so they got all new carpet for $50 in the house. So I'm kind of the hero, not the villain. I should have gotten a gold star and a trip to camp, but instead I got grounded, and that's just the way that works. But I think back to that moment, and honestly, the reason that there was this kind of, if you want to picture it this way, because a lot of us do, because we grew up on cartoons, the little angel on this side and the little demon on this side, and then you shouldn't do this, well, you should. And ultimately, my stubbornness said that even though I got the do not touch that, do not think about touching that, do not think about the thoughts that would lead you to do that, I still jumped in and thought, he doesn't really know. He has no idea. I can play with this and it would be fine. Why? Because the truth is, and we all have it a little bit, no matter how much, and it may not have been your father figure, you may have had someone else that guided you, that directed you, that when we hear these things that guide us in a certain direction, ultimately, we like to learn from the school of hard knocks and do it on our own. And so I ventured down that road stubbornly that ended in my demise. Brand new carpet for the whole house, but my demise. And I think at times we do the very same thing in nature with God. That we approach God and we hear what he has to say, but honestly take a step back and, well, I wonder, what's your paint can? What's that thing that honestly that God has told you about, that you feel that you need to change? And you may be new to faith and God and church and all of these things, but you have that thing, that weight in you that says, I know that this needs to change, that there's something not right here, that there's something a little unsettling at my core, and I don't know what that is. And I know that it needs to change, but I'm sure I'm the only one in the room, but that we know that that needs to change, and yet here we sit unchanged because we kind of like it the way that it is. And we're in this series, Miracles and Mistakes, and over the last couple weeks we've been looking at this guy named Moses who is praying and hoping and looking towards and seeing miracles that only God can do. But he feels like at every turn all that he does is make a mistake. And I don't know if you've ever been there, but I know that I have. That you're just going, God, just give me one day. Like just today, if you could just like keep everything away and keep the little demon that's going to mess up my car away. And if you could just keep those little demons away, my kids, if you could keep them away and you could do all this stuff, like if you could do all this, like then maybe the day will be all right, just please, and work will go fine, all this. But the truth is, when those things pop up and those things arise, we're pretty stubborn in how we listen to God. And I love the way Dallas Willard wrote many amazing books, but he put it this way. He says, our failure to hear his voice, God's voice, when we want, is due to the fact that we do not in general want to hear it. We only want it when we think we need it. And that's kind of this selective hearing thing. If you've ever been around children, even if you don't have them on your own, you realize that this is true. This premise is accurate. I could say, clean your room, 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 clean your room. I could change voices, try to say it in a different language. They'll be like, huh? I just don't understand what you're saying. I have no idea. What? Clean what? What's that even mean? But I could be down the block whispering to my wife, hey, would you mind? You think we maybe go take an ice cream? And all of a sudden, they're down the block. Ice cream. I heard ice cream. What happened? What? And all of a sudden, and go crazy because they're selective in what they want to hear. And honestly, if I'm being transparent, there are days where God is moving in ways and showing me things about my own existence that I know need to change. But I resist the Father's call to make the change. And he even takes this a step further and shares it this way, that we live in a culture that has, for centuries now, cultivated the idea that the skeptical person is always smarter than the one who believes. You can almost be as stupid as a cabbage as long as you doubt. Like, I'm not really sure about that, and well, I kind of doubt that, and we're stubborn, and there's interesting, and this so much so relates to this child and parent relationship. There's plenty of things probably that your parents or whoever brought you up have taught you, and you're kind of like, yeah, whatever, they don't even know. They don't know what it's like. Struggle's real, and you do all this stuff, and then you get later on in the journey of life, and all of us at some point pick up the phone and call someone that raised us or whatever and be like, my bad. Like, you were right, I was wrong. Because we have this stubborn bend within us. We have this kind of just like, I'm skeptical until I see it. And in this story of Moses' life, he is walking around with some of, including himself, the most stubborn and skeptical people ever. And when that gets together and boils up and rises up, it is a recipe for disaster. And if you have a Bible, in the story that we're going to look at, it's going to be in Exodus. It's the second book in the Bible. If you have a Bible, flip over to your table of contents, or just get the Bible and keep open, flipping until you get to Exodus chapter 16. You could download a Bible app if that's easier for you on your mobile device, or the Forefront Church app, and has all the notes already there for you that you could fill in. You can email it back to yourself, and then you can search your notes anytime you want with your email address, and it'll bring up all of them. And the reason that we do that is because we want you to be able to engage your faith. This is a great hour and change that we get to be together. But if this is what sustains you, it's like trying, we've talked about this before, it's like trying to lose weight and all week long you're eating fast food 24/7, and then you eat one salad, and you'd be like, I don't understand why I'm not losing weight here. And I'd be like, I kind of got an idea. And so, or be like, I don't understand working out for like 10 minutes. Be like, whoo, that was tough. And then you never work out again the rest of the week. And you're like, I don't get the results. And we'll be like, I think I know why. And so this is the same way with our faith, that if this is what sustains you through the week, this is a great start. And I'm thankful that you're with us and you're a part of what's happening. But we hope that you'll engage this more than just this time together. And before we get into this passage in Exodus chapter 16, I want to give you kind of a background on where we've been so far. You see, Moses is 80 years old. 80 years old. Good for him. Like, he is 80 years old. He's been doing the same thing day in and day out. And at 80 years old, God decides this is the time to call on him to do something great. I would be like, yo, you couldn't have picked me when I was like 25? Like when I was agile and mobile, like 80 years old? And at 80 years old, God calls out to him of all things through a bush that's burning but like not being consumed. And so he's like, and we read this story a couple weeks ago where he was like, that's odd that the bush is burning. I will walk over and see it. It's like, I would be freaking out. And he walks over, and then all of a sudden as he gets close, the bush starts talking to him. And he starts talking back to it, which if a bush talked to me, you go home today, bush is on fire in your yard, and it starts talking, I know 2 calls you're making, police and VB Psych. Like, you're getting ready. You're like, am I crazy, or is that bush talking? And you're finding your neighbor like, hey, is that bush talking? And you're like, all right, not calling that number, calling the Popo, because I need to get this taken care of. And you're doing, because freaking out, all right? He talks to me, he says, Moses, I have this plan for you. I need to take you, and I'm going to use you. I'm going to have you go to places, and there's this group of people, the Israelites, my people, and they are in slavery. And I want you to go to where they are in Egypt in slavery to the king, Pharaoh, and I want you to tell him, let my people go. And he's like, I'm really not good at talking. He's like, I'll take care of that. He's like, I don't know if they'll believe me. I'll give you some miraculous signs. He's like, all right, I have no more excuses. I guess I'll go. He goes. And then in the midst of all that, after a bunch of crazy stuff happens, Pharaoh's like, you know what? Just make this crazy stuff stop. Take these people. I don't want to have them. It's like, you take your crazy ex-girlfriend and go. Like, whatever. Just go. Get out of here. And so it takes all the people away. And Pharaoh's like, hey, while they're on their way out, why don't you send the army? Why don't you go kill him? And what Dan brought to us last week is that as Pharaoh sends his army out to kill all of the people with Moses, Moses gets to the edge of this place, the Red Sea. And the people are like, great, Pharaoh's army's coming, and we got a sea in front of us. And we're going to die. It would have been better to just die in Egypt in slavery. And he's like, cool your jets, guys. All right, God's got this. throws his staff into the ground, and the sea parts. Like, I wasn't there, but every account says that they walk through on dry land. And as they walk through on dry land, Pharaoh's army is like, this is kind of crazy. Yeah, the sea is up in the air parting. I think that's a little bit buck wild. And they try to go through it, and it says that as the Israelites got to the other side, that it collapsed on all of Pharaoh's army, and they were dead. It would only take that, and I would be like, God, I don't care what you say, what you do, I'm going to do it, because you just parted a crazy sea, and I've never seen that before. I've been at the beach all my life, and I've never seen that. I'm going to follow you. But not these guys. These guys watch all these miraculous signs and the things that God does, and they're like complaining, arguing, not like normal church people. You guys never complain. They're arguing, they're bickering, they're fighting, they're doing all this stuff. And all to their leader, Moses, as they're wandering through the desert. Now, to paint a picture of this, because it's hard to kind of, especially with the geography of the Middle East, to get a glance at this, and so I wrote this down to help you with it a little bit better. As they're going through this, Israel is slightly smaller than the state of New Jersey, okay? So imagine this. Moses, in effect, leads the people of Israel out of the District of Columbia, out of D.C., parts the Chesapeake Bay near like Annapolis, Maryland, and then they wander for 40 years in Delaware. All right, any of you want to wander through Delaware for 40 years? Yeah, no, me neither. All right, but they wander. The desert isn't as bad as Delaware, Michigan. And so, like, there may be nowhere, and you do this, and they're wandering through, and there's 40 years, and they're mad, they're hungry, and they're like, where's God? Where's God? And I'm like, he parted the Red Sea. He, like, gave you miracles and signs. You're not dead and in slavery. And they're like, we're just really hungry. God, where are you? And we pick up in chapter 16 in verse 11, and it reminds me so much of the parent-child, this father-child relationship, starting in verse 11 of chapter 16. It says, the Lord said to Moses, I have heard the grumbling of the Israelites. He's like, listen, man, I've been hearing it too. They're not just down there. I hear them. Yeah, they pound it out, man. I'm sorry. They're crazy. And I've heard them tell them, at twilight in the evening, you will eat meat, and in the morning you will be filled with bread. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God. And so what starts happening is in the middle of the twilight time frame, all of a sudden there are quail everywhere. And they're like, this is pretty wicked awesome. I would have preferred Chick-fil-A, but hey, nobody's got it. And so they're jumping in and doing their thing, and they're grabbing this. He said, listen, here's the deal. Whatever you gather, eat it that day. I'll provide for you tomorrow. And so the morning would come up, and there would be bread everywhere. They're like, this is awesome. Bread's just appearing. Like, there's bread and everything and all this, and they're fed. But he said, listen, eat everything that you have. Don't have any waste. Don't keep it for the next day. What do? Because they're what? They're stubborn. Just like we are in our childlike moments, and even sometimes as adults, that we want to do our own thing, and so they keep it. And then we wake up in the morning, and it is foul smelling. The whole camp smells, and it's really, really bad. And Moses, like I told you, like God told you. And so he's like, all right, here's what we're going to do. When it gets later on in the week, the day before what he was going to call the Sabbath day, a day of rest. He said, the day before the Sabbath, I'm going to give you 2 days worth of food. Like, I'm going to give you double the bread. I'm going to give you double the meat, double the quail. But you got to save that and prolong that through the next day, because I'm not going to give you anything. And here's the deal. Don't you go out and try to go find food out in the desert. I'm providing the day before. Just take what you have. You can eat it over the course of 2 days for those 2 days. So he gives them instructions. It's like, hey, man, I'm going to give you a bunch of Chick-fil-A number 5s. You just do your thing. You're going to be taken care of. But no, they wake up on the Sabbath day, the day that they were supposed to rest, and they go out to try to find more and more food. And in verse 27, nevertheless, some of the people went out on the seventh day to gather it, but they found none. Shocker, he said there was going to be none. Then the Lord said to Moses, how long, and this is so huge, how long will you refuse to keep my commandments and my instructions? I can't tell you a number of times that my mom or dad shared those words with me. I was a pretty good kid, but there were moments where they told me to do things, and I just went a different direction. I don't know if you've ever been in that way, not only in your childhood, but maybe even in your adult life. As you walk through this to go like, man, there are times where I am going the wrong way. But God doesn't like send down lightning and kill them all. No, he says, bear in mind that the Lord has given you the Sabbath. I've given you, hey, I know you've messed up, but listen, I gave you a day of rest. Some of you guys don't know what to do with a day of rest. Give it to me. I will gladly work that out. Sit on my tail. Bear in mind, the Lord has given you the Sabbath as a day to rest. That is why on the 6th day we give you bread for 2 days. Everyone is to stay where they are, and on the 7th day, no one is to go out. He's saying, listen, I got you, all right? I'm going to take care of you. In the Israelites, it's just stubborn as can be. They just don't get what God wants to do and how God wants to move through their lives. It's kind of like this water here. How, just a guess, and you're allowed to yell out in church. I know if you had a different experience, this is okay. How much do you think that this cup weighs with the water in it? 8 ounces, 24 ounces, 12 ounces, 20 ounces. There's all kinds of other early first service. That people were running out, and somebody said more than that, and I was like, "That's okay." And honestly, it doesn't matter how much this cup with the water weighs in it. You see, if I were to hold this now for the next couple minutes up high and above my head, not a big deal. You know, I mean, I got the guns right there. Check them out. No, I didn't say what kind of guns. They're dart guns, Nerf. Like I could hold that up for a couple minutes and be good to go, right? Now, what if that changed from a couple minutes to an hour? Well, hey, I might be able to hold it. I don't know. Maybe, and then like 2 hours, 3 hours. What if I was challenged to stay here for 12 hours holding this cup up? Like it's going to go back. Like the burn. Like it's going to start happening, right? Here's the deal. There's so many times that God has given us something that he wants us to do. He's given us a command. He's given us a miracle. And instead of consuming it, instead of taking it for what it is, we just want to hold on to it and we just want to complain. And we just want to be angry. The problem is the weight of that will eventually consume us. Instead of doing with it what is supposed to be done, the very action that's needed to accept the miracle for the miracle and to accept the command that he's given as a command and take it in, instead we just hold on to it. Then we get angry. Oh, well, what's God up to? What's God doing? Why isn't God showing up? I'm so mad. And we shake our fist in the sky. And much like the Israelites, this stubborn nature and this skeptical nature had consumed them. And there's a few things that if you're taking notes that I'd love for you just briefly to be able to reaffirm what God wants for you is, and I know we don't necessarily like this term, this heavenly Father. And a lot of people don't like that because they don't have a very good example of a father figure, or the men around them didn't rise to the occasion the way that they should. And so then when we think about God the Father, we go, well, if God the Father is anything like what earthly fathers are, I don't want to have anything to do with that. And the truth is God is the amazing, perfect example of what a father should be, in the way that he loves, in the way that he shows grace, in the way that he cares for us, in the way that he also takes care of us when we need to know that there needs to be a change. And not in a hurtful, downcast way, but in a loving, guiding way. And the Israelites couldn't get this through their head. Which is why, much like children sometimes, and nobody likes to hear this, especially myself, sometimes you will be stubborn and annoying. And God looks down and he's like, I love you, but you are stubborn, all right? Like, I don't understand. You just keep running into the wall and running into the wall. But God the Father will continue to give you miracles. Even in your stubbornness and even in my stubbornness, that God still shows up in huge ways. And sometimes we think like, if I'm bad, we believe in this, and I hear people all the time like, oh, karma happens for people. Like, actually, the Bible is, in the story of God, is completely anti-karma. You see, we sin, we deserve death, God gives us grace and life. People say, oh, well, you get what you deserve. I'm glad God does not practice the premise and the idea of karma. You see, I get grace, you get grace, even though because we've sinned and fallen short, we deserve death. God goes, I love you too much, and so I'm going to give you life. And so even in the moments when you're stubborn and annoying, think about when you've been around. Go out, just hang out in the lobby. Even if you don't have kids, you're single, just hang out in the lobby. Just for a moment. I know everybody thinks that their kids are amazing. They're not. Because you hang out there while you'd be like, oh yeah, stubborn and annoying. I totally get God's premise when I act a fool. Like, and they will, and you love your kids, and you're trying to come out, but that lobby gets buck wild. You're like, I don't even know what happened to my kid. What's going on? They're running all over the place. Next thing you know, they're swinging from the lights, and I don't know. And there's, or the chandelier, or whatever. And so they're going crazy. And so when you see that premise play out, or you're in public and a kid's going nuts at the shopping, that God is looking at us and going, imagine when we are falling short and we're stubborn and we're hurtful, that God is still showing us grace even when we are maniacs. That is unreal. And here's the other premise of that. The second thing is that you will break his commands. That doesn't give us a license to be like, well, since I'm going to break his commands, woo, and just like go crazy, all right? That's not the way it is. There's actually this guy named Paul who wrote to the church at the time at Rome. And it's in Romans chapter 6 of the New Testament of the Bible. He says, so should we keep on sinning? Should we keep on acting a fool so that God's grace will increase? He said, may it never be. And so even though you and I are going to break his commands, God the Father will not abandon you. And I know this is hard to wrap your head around. It's hard for me to wrap my head around. Because there was a time that my dad took me to 7-Eleven. Dad of the year. My mom said, hey, take your son. I don't want to take him. No, fine, go. And they go to 7-Eleven. And then all of a sudden my dad comes back. My mom's like, where's Jason? Oh, snap. Left me at 7-Eleven. I didn't realize it because I was still sitting in the like 2 foot of little toys that are there. He comes, just grabs me and goes on. Goes home. Never knew. And I jokingly say that my dad's been great and he's always been there. But like God the Father will never abandon you. He will never leave you at 7-Eleven. Just kidding. My dad's in the room right now, which makes this so awkward. Love you, Dad. And here's the thing. You will be looking for grace, and God the Father will show it. He's going to show it to you. Morning by morning, he's going to continue to show up in ways that are just unbelievable. Even when they should have been reprimanded for doing wrong, he said, listen, hey, he doesn't send down lightning bolts and make them all dead. He said, listen, I give you a day of rest. You should go ahead and take it. Don't do anything. He is giving them permission to sit and enjoy nothing. He's like, I'm going to give you all the food you need. Sit back, relax. Watch the Israeli Twitter feed and just kick it. Turn on Netflix and chill in the desert of Delaware. And just shows this amazing grace for them. And I would not just dads, but to everybody in this room, imagine what it would be like if you exercise grace over wrath in every aspect of your life. Today, as you go out, and it's going to be cray-cray at the restaurants today. Imagine if you go out and you don't flip out at the waitress when she messes up your order because you ordered something and it clearly ended the world because it didn't come out the way you wanted. Or as you're driving to work on Monday and someone does cut you off, that you don't let them know that they're number one. What if when your spouse drops the ball and doesn't do what you wanted them to, that you jump in and do it anyway because you're going to show grace and you're going to have a servant's heart? What if when your kids don't live up to the expectations you put on them because you're living vicariously through them, that you show them grace and love anyway? Because they're unique and made in the image of God. Because God does it too. And so maybe the big thing that we can take away is that God the Father will give you a cup full of miracles and of commands. But instead of being skeptical and instead of being stubborn, maybe we should just receive both. that take the miracles for what they are in life and be very thankful that God shows up in beautiful ways. But that also when he gives us commands, that we won't run away from them, and that we'll be honorable, not only to God, but to one another. And I'd speak directly to the men in the room for a moment. On a day like today, whether you're a father or not, or whether you ever plan to be, this is from teenagers all the way up, someone's watching you. There's always someone younger watching. They may not be a direct part of your life. Maybe they're just off in the distance. Maybe it's a neighbor kid. Maybe it's the people that you see in your circle, but people are watching. It's not culture that sets the definition of manhood and what it means to be honorable. It's you. It's me. And so as we walk through this existence, may we not be stubborn and skeptical of how God is moving, but instead receive it and be men and women of honor and of courage that follow God and watch the miracles and the beautiful commands that take place and the ripple effect that that has on mankind when we receive both. Why don't you pray with me?